So about a week ago, when I was finishing the Zwan Falun Dafa text, again, as I periodically do, I reviewed the Bible and considered some of the contradictions, the truth in it, if it can really be taken seriously, if it's something that I still need part of my spiritual diet, as it were, now that I've got some interest in Eastern religions again, and looking at the possibilities of maybe doing Qigong practice or something like that. And so I went back to one resource that I've often gone back to, one of my favorite atheist writers, and a man that I had a chance to meet when I was back in college. A few years ago, I remember he came to our Free Thought Society. I was one of the few Christian members of the Free Thought Society, but I would go in just because I needed that to challenge my faith, to make sure that I was believing in any of this stuff, and just because I love that debate. I love picking apart all these things and trying to figure out what's true and what's not. Dan Barker is a huge presence now, and he became a famous evangelist for the atheists in 1984, which makes him exactly half my age. He was 35 in 1984, and he appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and she had stacked the audience with very religious people who came at him, tried to get him to renounce his atheism, to go back to Christ. But Dan was there, and they didn't really have much prepared apart from emotional things, and Dan was very happy to be in that situation, and that episode is important for him as well, because that's where he met Anne-Marie Gaylor, and together they founded the Freedom from Religious Foundation, which makes a lot of interesting videos. Interesting, I say. It's a genre of study. It's something that I have on in the background when I'm doing other things, just sort of like politics. But it's amazing how I go through these phases where I think, oh, maybe the Bible, maybe this book really isn't full of anything worth taking seriously. Maybe it's just purely a literary work. But then I also found there's another preacher that I found recently. His name is Mike Winger. Now, Mike Winger has done the awesome task of going online on YouTube and refuting a lot of these claims made about Christianity, claims made about the Bible, and he's gone at it directly without any of this flat earth crap that the Great Harvest Church came with, or like Steven Anderson. Steven Anderson is very anti-gay, and he's got some very stiff doctrinal beliefs, and he doesn't really entertain the thoughts of atheists that much either, apart from saying, the fool says that God isn't real. Anyway, there have been a couple of Bible contradictions that I've always found troubling, which I've decided to walk through and get some ideas. Now, if we look at the common Bible contradictions that you will get when you look on any atheist channel, most of them have to do with perspective or incomplete words, like the words of Jesus. What exactly did he say? Did he say anything on the cross? Who was beside him on the cross? What color robe was he wearing? Was it scarlet or what was it purple? And what was written on the sign above the cross? Because there are different accounts of that. And what about the witness accounts? How many angels were in the tomb? How did the exact events of that day play out? In modern times, we are so focused on having multiple camera angle perspectives of everything that happens. We might take a narrative, look at the case of Nick Sandmann, the Native Americans in D.C. last winter, and how we were sold one perspective, but then when other footage came out, we realized it was all wrong. We expect that almost with historical accounts. And one great argument that I think it was Dan Barker raised is that if God really wanted us to believe, he would have had all these events happen at a time when we could confirm everything just as we were able to confirm it now. And so there is this historical superiority. It's this feeling, well, we've got better information now, so we are better able to understand God. So we shouldn't look at this book, especially when it has evident contradictions. Now, looking at differences of perspective, whether it was a scarlet robe or a purple robe, as Mike Winger smartly put it, just like the dress meme. We remember the picture of the dress. No one could argue, or no one could agree on what color it was. Little differences in perspective like that, I think, if anything, that just builds the credibility. For anyone who has ever studied law or literature or history, or in my graduate studies, I studied biography writing. Whenever you write about real events that have perspectives, that have that human element, of course you can't get a perfect snapshot. And if anything, little discrepancies only lend to the credibility of what happened. Because when we understand that each human has a unique perspective, the more perspectives you have, even if there are little discrepancies, the more it lends to the overall truth of what's happening. The Bible is a big picture book. It's not a book about each little thing has to make perfect sense in our context today. And to read it, you have to have some tolerance for ambiguity. That's a term that comes from linguistics, where if you're reading something and it doesn't make complete sense to you right away, you continue reading anyway, and you piece it together over time. And some people have a stronger tolerance for ambiguity, meaning they can read works like Finnegan's Wake, where it's all one amorphous, weird sentence, and not be too hung up on it. Where there are others who have a hard time reading unless they are able to define every sentence or every word and understand the meaning of every sentence exactly. I'm definitely on the side of having more tolerance for ambiguity. And it even has worked against me in my early studies of the Bible, in which I would just say, well, I don't understand it, I'm not meant to understand it. But when you focus on things, certain details come out that are difficult. Now, like I said, looking at the life of Jesus, certain discrepancies in the accounts of the Gospels, we can reconcile that just by saying, well, we've got all these different perspectives working together, but the main picture is the same. But if we look at some Bible verses saying that the word is purified 7 times over, I think in Isaiah it says, the word is a rock that can smash the hammer to small pieces. It says in Jeremiah. There are a couple of things that still were problematic for me. One that was pointed out to me, a Christian caller on Freedom Main Radio said that in the Bible it says that bats are birds. And if you look in Leviticus, you do see that there's a list of birds that are unclean, and the bat somehow makes it onto that list. Which you can say, aha, God is foolish. God does not know that a bat is a bird. When we realize that a bat isn't a bird, a bat is more like a mouse, a bat is a mammal. When really this is, again, a historical prejudice that we have. We're using modern zoology, which didn't exist in their time. And for the Hebrew of the day, like considering a bat a bird, even though a bat doesn't lay eggs, bat is warm-blooded and so on, makes sense because that's how they organize things in their culture. And so it's good to take a step back and realize that we are seeing things from a modern lens, modern perspective, our modern definitions of everything scientific, zoological, and so because of that, we are presented with this evident contradiction. Bat, bird, I mean, the Hebrew word that's used would also include insects, but do we have a word in English that includes all flying creatures? And the answer is no. Another thing is use of time. We often see 3 days and 3 nights, as in Jesus was in the tomb 3 days and 3 nights. Esther and her maidens were to pray and fast for 3 days and 3 nights. But in the book of Esther, for example, we see that on the 3rd day of fasting, when she was still supposed to be fasting and praying, she approaches the king and asks for his help. Again, we also have 40 days and 40 nights. We have Jesus being tempted in the wilderness and fasting 40 days and 40 nights. You think, well, can you really go without food and without water for that long? Medically speaking, no. But when we realize that 40 days is simply an idiom, just like 3 days and 3 nights, these are time idioms used to express a certain length of time, certain passage of time. Just like 40 years in the desert. Does that literally mean 40 years? there was that cute picture on Google Maps showing the exact path from Egypt to the Promised Land, and how walking it wouldn't take 40 years. It only takes a couple weeks or something. Again, that's missing the whole point. That's taking the whole Bible literally when Jesus himself spoke in parables. I remember hearing about a pastor recently who decided he was going to try going 40 days without food and without water, and he died. And that's the problem with taking the Bible literally. Even if you are in support of it, it's like the people who take it literally and believe in it, and the people who take it literally and disbelieve in it, which I would say more people on the literal side are those who disbelieve, are the ones who are completely missing the whole point. There is one contradiction that I wasn't able to so clearly fit, and that had to do with numbers. It has to do with King Jehoiakim of Kingdom of Judah, I believe. In the book of Kings, it says that he started his rule when he was 8 years old, whereas in Chronicles, it says that he was 18 when he started his rule. And this is something that you can look at and you can say, aha, the Bible is wrong, the Bible is wrong. And here the best answer and the only answer you could find is a copyist error, which has explained to me that yes, the Bible does have errors in it, I guess, errors like a copyist error, something that was meant to be true, but that doesn't remove the meaning of the whole thing. We see how numbers are used mainly for symbolic reasons, idioms, like expressions of time. 8 or 18, does it make much of a difference? I mean, a little bit, but it's not like the Bible is full of these mistakes. I mean, that's just one. There might be a few other time discrepancies or number discrepancies. Again, looking at numbers, we see them as used in spiritual ways, symbolic ways. We see the numbers used not literally, whether it's 3 days or 40 days or whatever. And so we shouldn't get too hung up about that. And we shouldn't throw away the whole Bible over a copyist error. The bottom line, for a book that was written by so many people over so many different times, it's amazing that it fits together at all. And it's kind of like, I remember around Christmas time when I was a kid, my mom really loves jigsaw puzzles. And I remember we would put together these jigsaw puzzles with hundreds and hundreds of pieces. And suppose one of those pieces had a frayed, broken end or something, it wouldn't matter too much. We would still be able to get the full picture. And we think of a jigsaw puzzle, it's all made at once, and of course it all fits together, but to consider another jigsaw puzzle, something as complicated and as intricate as the Bible, fitting together so well, and like the Dead Sea Scrolls giving us evidence, the original sources giving us evidence that predate anything, predate even the Buddha, a lot of this stuff, we can look at that and think, well, this is so unusual, so remarkable, that no matter what human error, what copyists have done, what we have done to alter the Bible over time, it still holds up incredibly well. And so I guess that's my preaching for you today. Over and out.